Okay, so uh, let's unpack this really fascinating stack of notes and reflections you've shared with us. This isn't, our usual deep dive into a book or article. It's much more personal, an exploration of internal architecture.
That's right. The source material describes these distinct subpersonalities, or what he calls internal archetypes, really digs into them.
Yeah, within one individual who the source calls Max. And it goes into detail, right? Their core vibes, how they express desire and control, which is often framed here as kinks and fetishes.
Exactly. And what their presence tells us about Max, but also maybe something broader about, the complexity of human psychology itself.
Right. So the goal here is really to understand these different facets. They're almost like different programs running or voices inside. What makes them tick? How do they interact? We're not just listing things, we're exploring a kind of personal mythology.
Think of it like an internal map. Yeah. Charting the landscapes of desire, identity, control, all within Max. So let's dive into this material you sent over and really explore these distinct voices.
Absolutely. The source lays out 10 core figures. Each one feels quite unique with its own energy, its own purpose. Let's start with the first one described.
Okay, that would be Liz. The source calls her the apex predator,
Oh.
and her core vibe is just power, control, a kind of untouchable femininity.
And the listed kinks reinforce that. Domination, size difference, humiliation, worship, financial control, exhibitionism. The source analysis says she embodies this pure hunger for power. She wants to take, but also make others feel good about giving it to her.
Control is proof she exists, basically.
Mm.
She feels most real when others obey her.
What's really interesting is how the source talks about her weaponizing charisma. Liz, it says, reveals the shadow side, a desire for untouchable femininity that's actually quite dangerous, almost divine, and deliciously destructive, I think was the phrase.
Yeah, stemming from maybe being underestimated in the past. It's not insecurity, though. It's presented as insatiable.
And the imagery really brings Liz to life. There's this scene from the source. Liz, pink heels up on a boardroom table. She's not talking business, maybe just idly about lip gloss, but she's clearly the one in charge.
Right.
Yeah.
And the CEO clears his throat, wants to talk numbers, and she just slides her phone over.
Yeah, saying, send me 500 so I consider your opinion, just like that.
And the source says he does it. Then later, there's that photo of her in a champagne bath, using his card, apparently, with the caption.
It's not theft if you smile while doing it. Wow. That just nails it.
It really does.
That captures the core takeaway for Liz perfectly. Pleasure is control, and her desire to curate them, shape people and the world to her liking. It's the eroticism of just absolute, unquestioned command.
Okay, shifting gears completely now, we have Devon, labeled the Stoic Ascetic. His whole thing, according to the source, is denial, restraint, emotional control, even pain as a form of purification.
A very different frequency, yeah. His core kinks listed are discipline as kink, prolonged edging or denial, sensation play focused on pain or endurance, emotional control, and this idea of purification through suffering.
The source's take is fascinating. Devon claims he's above desire, right? But his intense discipline is the kink itself, the edge of resisting. That's the point for him.
He's rigid because feeling too much is maybe terrifying, so bracing against that flood of wanting, that's where the arousal is.
Exactly. Denial is his power source. Restraint isn't just self-control. It's mastering his own body and mind so that any yielding, any surrender feels profound.
And the pain isn't punishment, it's catharsis. The source calls it that. Burning away shame or noise to feel worthy through endurance.
It reveals him as like a masochist of the soul, craving clarity but defined by that really brutal tension between wanting something and holding back. Kink refined, the source says, like an altar boy with transgressive thoughts.
The imagery described is subtle but intense. Candlelit room, Devon sitting, eyes closed. You touch his shoulder, he just breathes slowly, doesn't flinch.
Then you graze his throat.
And he opens his eyes, totally calm, and just says, do that again and I won't stop. The power in that restraint.
And the insight the source offers is that you're the one trembling because you know he means it. He can simply wait longer than you can resist. The core idea for Devon seems to be that the deepest surrender isn't from force, but from that internal endurance, that delicious edge of almost breaking.
Okay, then there's Kelly, the empathic healer. Her vibe is very much the caregiver, focused on emotional intimacy and this deep, deep need to be needed.
Her listed kinks really reflect that. Caregiver little dynamics, that nurturing role, emotional intimacy as arousal. Consent play focused on affirmation, not just permission. Receiving service submission. And crucially, being needed is the central turn-on.
The analysis for Kelly is that affection is her power source. Her love feels almost holy, but there's a subtle possessiveness there, right? Making you feel safe and seen also means she kind of claims a piece of you in that vulnerability.
hmm Consent play for her isn't just ticking a box. It's like worshiping the yes, finding eroticism in that chosen surrender.
And emotional intimacy isn't just foreplay for Kelly, it is the main event. One truly vulnerable conversation, and you feel totally emotionally exposed.
What Kelly reveals, fundamentally, is finding power through emotional access, not power over. The source suggests if she makes you cry in her arms just once, you'll keep coming back for that specific feeling of being held and seen. She's called a kink therapist with a rosé-scented hug.
The imagery nails this. You're shaking, overwhelmed, end up on her couch, head in her lap. She's brushing your hair, murmuring, "You don't have to be strong right now, just let go, I've got you."
And that feeling of melting, it's not necessarily classic arousal, but sheer absolute relief, which becomes its own kind of eroticism, doesn't it?
Definitely. Then later, wrapped in a robe, she kisses your temple and says, "You belong here with me, like this." And suddenly the source says, safe feels a lot like submission.
Yeah. The key insight for Kelly is that deep connection between vulnerability, caregiving, and finding power in being the one others need to fall apart safely.
Right. Let's switch it up again. Kenny, the analyst.
His core vibe is totally different. Intellectual, data-driven, obsessed with structure, with understanding how things work.
His listed kinks are interesting. Objectification, but the source stresses it's theoretical or clinical for him. Scenario scripting, observer kink, data-driven arousal, and perfectionism as a kind of foreplay.
He's the brainiac, right?
Yeah,
His ultimate fetish seems to be understanding the mechanics of another person.
exactly. The analysis says he often won't even touch someone physically until he feels he's completely mapped their triggers, their patterns, like writing a user manual for you.
Objectification isn't about dehumanizing then, it's about deconstruction. Seeing you as a complex puzzle, calling someone an efficient asset or a good toy is just streamlined understanding for him.
Yeah. And scenario scripting is like running a simulation, choreographing the whole encounter in his head or on paper first. Observer kink is literally watching from behind glass, taking notes, grading reactions. Wow. So what Kenny reveals is someone using intellect for control, but secretly craving chaos that has structure, wildness he can predict and analyze.
Right. When you react exactly as his data predicted, the source says that's better than climax for him. He's hyper-attuned. If you ask, what next? He's apparently already got the script open, highlighted to your exact line.
The imagery provided is pretty intense. You're blindfolded, tied down specific rules. Kenny's voice comes in, clinical, but maybe a hint amused. At precisely 5 minutes in, you're going to beg, let's test that theory.
And he just watches you crumble under the anticipation, jotting a note. Fascinating. Even more responsive than expected.
The source says you realize you've never felt so completely known, so accurately predicted. And in his world, that's the deepest form of being claimed. He fantasizes about outcomes, and you're his favorite case study.
So the core takeaway for Kenny is that understanding and prediction are his path to control. Finding predictability in human chaos is his ultimate turn-on.
Okay, now for something totally different again. Mac, the trickster. His vibe is pure role play, delightful chaos, absurdity.
His kinks listed are things like role play, but often absurd stuff. Absurdity as seduction, prank kinks, chaotic exhibitionism, improvised dom subdynamics, and getting aroused by laughter during sex.
This source paints him as the inner child who found arousal through slapstick and, well, chaos.
Yeah, the analysis suggests that for Mac, comedy and kink are basically twins. Roleplay isn't serious. It's like evil gummy bear overlord demanding marshmallow tribute.
I love that.
Absurdity breaks the mood, disarms you with laughter until your defenses drop and you surrender to the silliness, which then becomes erotic. Exhibitionism is public but ridiculous, like sex in a closet during a fancy party wearing novelty wigs.
So this reveals Mac using comedy to disarm, strip away shame, and connect with less fear. His deep need is intimacy without the pressure of seriousness. Chaos and laughter are his shield.
Exactly. Humor is his intimacy language. If he makes you laugh during sex, that's like his I love you. Yeah! The source calls him the jester, trying to make every orgasm a punchline.
The imagery is so vivid and funny. Silk sheets. Mac walks in wearing a full Shakespearean costume and a sock puppet.
Oh, yeah. Fair wench, he intones, the sock puppet bobbing. Prepare thine thighs for, I know not what.
And you're laughing so hard you don't even notice he's somehow gotten undressed?
10 minutes later, you're breathless, flushed. He grins. Hey, don't say I didn't romance you.
And then, just when you're recovering, he pulls out a kazoo.
Pulls out a kazoo and plays the Titanic theme dramatically. His kink isn't dominance or submission, it's joyful disruption. The moment the intended mood breaks and raw pleasure sneaks in anyway because you're laughing too hard to resist.
The core takeaway from Matt, combining humor and chaos, is his way to intimacy, dismantling the seriousness that can make desire feel heavy.
Okay, moving into fantasy territory now. Tommy the Inventor. He's associated with transformation, world-building, literal shape-shifting.
His listed kinks are transformation kinks, building erotic world spaces, shape-shifting and gender play within those spaces, body mods as arousal, magical realism as intimacy, and metaphysical intimacy.
The source says he doesn't just want sex. He wants it to be impossible, mythic, transformative.
Right. The analysis for Tommy is that his arousal is fundamentally about possibility, the erotic what if. He's the internal avatar of suddenly sprouting wings or growing huge or watching a partner dissolve into shadow.
And transformation isn't just physical for him, it's emotional, spiritual. The act of the body becoming something new is the turn-on. World-building means sex happens in entirely invented universes with their own lore.
Shape-shifting and gender play. Gender is like a vibrant palette for him, not a fixed box. Body mods could be temporary tentacles or glowing freckles. He dreams in surreal aesthetics and orgasms and metaphors, according to the source.
It reveals Tommy as the pure dreamer, driven by wonder, identity exploration, curiosity itself as kink. He doesn't crave power or safety or submission in the usual ways. He craves discovery, potential. Arousal is evolution for him. He wants to be turned into something new.
The imagery paints this beautiful, strange picture. A softly glowing room, alien music sounds. Tommy's eyes flicker like holograms. He brushes your skin and you feel yourself changing, fingers elongating slightly, chest shifting subtly.
Your breath feels different, somehow more you, and he whispers, this is what you were always meant to feel like, isn't it?
And just like that, you feel like something greater, wanting to explore possibilities. The source calls his kink existential alchemy. He offers to rebuild you from the inside out, and you'll thank him for every glitch, every rewrite.
The core takeaway for Tommy is the erotic power of transformation and the potential for identity itself to be this fluid, exciting landscape.
Okay, next up is Val, the achiever. Her focus is intense. Competition, praise, even using degradation as a tool for motivation.
Her kinks listed are competition, praise kink, receiving it, degradation as motivation, giving it, power struggles, performance validation, and seeing orgasm itself as a victory or reward.
She gets turned on by results, the source says. Groans that sound like applause, whimpers that signify acknowledging her dominance.
Yeah, the analysis frames Val as the ultimate overachiever who learned early that validation came from excellence, from winning. Now she gets off on earning pleasure, or wielding the power to deny it to others she thinks haven't earned her.
Competition isn't just a game, it's a serious duel. Praise is currency, but it must be earned. Better than the last one is high praise from her.
And degradation isn't about breaking you down, it's a tool to push you. That's all you've got, is a dare, right?
Right. An orgasm is the ultimate victory. If she lets you finish first, the source suggests it's often just to watch you lose control while she keeps hers.
What Val reveals is perfectionism with a whip, success colored by bruises, a strict meritocracy in sensual form. She fears mediocrity more than pain. And there's this deep internal question. Is she only desirable when she's performing, pushing harder?
The imagery for Val is visceral, sparring. She's straddling you, breathless, sweaty, a cruel smirk. If you think you've earned it, she purrs, beg like someone who deserves it.
You hesitate, smack. Not necessarily hard, but sharp, dismissive. She grabs your jaw, gently but firmly.
Too slow. Round 2, no breaks. Try again, Ricky.
The source says you're not just exhausted, you're addicted to the intensity. Every second feels like a competition where you just have to try harder. Val craves rivals worth conquering. If she chooses you, you're simultaneously on a pedestal and under her heel.
The core takeaway for Val is how deeply tangled her desire is with achievement, validation, and that relentless drive for victory.
Okay, let's turn now to Tira, the philosopher, associated with intellectual domination, ritual, and this really interesting take on moral corruption as arousal.
Her listed kinks are intellectual domination, ritual kink, where the ceremony is central, prolonged consent play focused on mental breaking points, power exchange framed as metaphysics, moral corruption kink, watching someone yield their beliefs. emotional precision, and worship expressed through thought.
The analysis for Tyra suggests she uses language and intellect like a leash. If she can outthink you, dissect your arguments, guide your thoughts, she feels like she owns you.
Ritual play turns sex into a ceremony, a sacred transaction. Every touch a thesis point, every moan a counterargument.
And moral corruption is a secret engine. She gets off on watching someone inherently good slowly slide from resistance to surrender to her ideas or desires, asking, "Why are you doing it now?" Then kissing your hand like a priest blessing a sinner.
So this reveals Tyra's control is often disguised as curiosity. She invites inquiry, doesn't demand blind submission. In that space where you feel safe and smart, she subtly wraps around your mind.
She wants to be believed in, understood deeply, or even intellectually broken in a way that reshapes your worldview. The source suggests she's intellectualizing her own deep needs, wondering if she herself is capable of surrender.
The imagery is very atmospheric, cerebral. On a rug, books around, candles flickering, she sits, fully clothed, asks softly, "What is your definition of power?"
You answer? Maybe confidently. She interrupts gently, "No. What is your definition when you're naked and trembling?"
And the source says you suddenly realize you don't have an answer for that. She leans in, touches your chin lightly. Good, that's the first honest thing you've said all night.
And she lets the silence do the work, lets the weight of the question sink in. Tira works to change your internal narrative until you crave her intellectual control. When she finally does touch you, it feels less physical, more like a confession or revelation.
The core takeaway for Tira. She embodies the erotic power of the mind, using language and intellect for profound connection and control.
Okay, moving on to Bannock, the protector. Associated with service, gentle power exchange, and a deep need for consent affirmation.
His listed kinks are service kink, giving it, gentle power exchange, receiving it, consent confirmation at every step, touch starvation release, silent submission, and this capacity for both holding others and needing to be held himself.
The source suggests Bannock is the internal figure born from immense responsibility, needing a counterpart.
Right. The analysis for Bannock is that kink, for him, isn't about asserting control. It's fundamentally about finally letting go of it. Service isn't servitude. It's quiet, devotional acts of care, offering safety.
Power exchange is the fantasy of handing his immense internal power and responsibility over to someone trusted implicitly, someone who sees him not just as a shield, but as a man with needs and burdens.
Consent affirmation is crucial because he's operated under obligation for so long. He needs every touch, every command, every vulnerable moment to be chosen freely by his partner. Confirming his needs for release are also valid desired.
And silent submission, kneeling, offering wrists, is like a nonverbal plea. "I'm done enough. I can stop holding the world up now."
What Bannock reveals is someone deeply devotional. His energy isn't primarily dumb or sub, but service-oriented, yearning for reciprocal care. He wants to be the rock, but dreams of collapsing in someone's arms and being caught.
Not because he's weak, but because he desperately needs to be saved or cared for himself just this once. He'd carry you out of a burning building, no question, but his fantasy is you pulling him into bed saying, "You've done enough, hero, let me take it from here."
The imagery is quietly powerful. He's kneeling, not commanded, but by choice, expressing a deep internal need, shirt off, hands behind his back, jaw locked with emotion, says nothing, just waits, offering himself.
You run fingers through his hair, softly, whisper, "You don't have to hold it all anymore." The source describes him exhaling like a dam finally breaking.
Later, you might just hold him, spoon him, repeating, "You're safe now, you did well, you're mine now, just rest." He sleeps deeply, finally released.
His kink isn't obedience. It's the profound relief of being seen as more than just his role. He doesn't need a typical dom. He needs a sanctuary. A partner who says, even the strong deserve to surrender, deserve care.
The core takeaway for Bannock. That complex dynamic between immense internal strength, the burden it creates, and the erotic release found in relinquishing control to a trusted, nurturing partner.
And finally, Addie. The free spirit. Her energy is pure id, basically. Exhibitionism, spontaneity, high-risk thrills.
Her listed kinks are exhibitionism, especially public, spontaneous sex, drawing energy from group scenarios, touchy chaos, seeking high-risk thrills, and a general aversion to wearing pants or following rules.
She's the internal voice that just says, I want it now, and I honestly don't care who's watching.
Right. The analysis for Addie is that she embodies freedom itself, erotified. Arousal is permission for her permission to be seen, wanted unapologetically, unfiltered.
Exhibitionism isn't just showing skin. It's in sunlight, public, thrilling, precisely because she doesn't care about judgment or consequences. Spontaneity means zero planning. You might wake up next to her on a random beach, and she's already undoing your swimsuit.
Group scenarios are less about specific partners, more about kinetic energy, movement, sweat, joyful noise. High-risk thrills are fuel sex on a moving train, a hiking trail with strangers nearby during a lightning storm.
What Addie reveals is the pure, unmedicated thrill response, a dopamine flirtation fantasy. She doesn't need to be seen to exist, but she blooms, becomes more potent when she is.
The source suggests she's reckless because the world tried to cage her energy, and she refuses to be told no again. Her sex life is a festival, a dare, a challenge, often a joke shared with her tongue in your mouth.
Her deepest intimacy is expressed through chaos, raw touch, shared, thrilling moments of rebellion.
The imagery for Addie is electric. Rooftop at night, fireworks exploding. She's half-dressed already, laughing, straddles your lap suddenly, whispers with a wild grin, "We've got 2 minutes. Want to make it interesting."
You might protest, look around instinctively. She just grinds down harder, teasingly loud enough for others nearby. Or are you one of those inside voices only types? Her eyes are wide, wild, her grin wicked.
And the source says you give in, not because she demanded permission, but because she gave you a compelling, chaotic reason to forget you ever needed it. Her kink isn't chaos as an end. It's ecstatic release through rebellion and pure, uninhibited self-expression.
She's the human storm that makes you feel utterly alive, the one-night stand in your wildest daydreams. The core takeaway for Addie. The erotic power of freedom, spontaneity, finding intimacy and self-expression through embracing chaos and shedding inhibition.
Okay, wow. So we've explored these 10 incredibly distinct internal landscapes based on the source material, but the notes don't stop there, right? There's a whole section on how they interact chemistry.
Right. This part is really fascinating because it looks at how specific pairings of these subpersonalities create unique and powerful dynamics within Max's internal world.
Let's look at a few of the combinations described. They sound pretty compelling.
Okay, first up, there's Liz and Kenny. The source calls this the Dom CEO and the data analyst subdynamic.
And the source explains it works because Liz commands with absolute confidence, and Kenny finds his deepest satisfaction in obeying through structure and efficiency. Liz loves that feeling of someone knowing their place, especially if they've literally charted it.
Yeah, and Kenny, in turn, feels profoundly seen and well-utilized when treated as a valuable, if subservient, tool.
The scene vibe described is really telling. He hands her this meticulous script for the encounter.
And she just laughs, tears it up, makes him beg for instructions without it. And Kenny apparently adapts almost instantly, finding a different kind of structure in the raw lack of it.
The source even amusingly calls Kenny her little productivity tool in this dynamic. The chemistry is structure meeting spontaneous command.
Very different, but just as intense, is Devon and Tira, described as the ascetic monk and the philosopher priestess.
The source calls this high-intensity slow burns. It works because Devon craves purity and restraint, finding the sacred in submission, while Tira frames submission not just physically, but as this deep moral or intellectual test.
They edge each other, mentally and spiritually as much as physically.
The scene vibe is a candlelit ritual, according to the notes. No one touches for hours. Tension just builds and builds until maybe one hand grazes a shoulder.
And the whole carefully constructed facade just shatters into raw need. The bonus insight the source adds is their aftercare might involve shared journaling, dissecting the experience with existential dread as a surprising byproduct.
Okay, another compelling duo. Tommy and Addie, the fantasy world builder meets the chaos fairy.
Why this works, the source says, is Tommy's constantly creating new realities, new possibilities, and Addie just lives her life like she's already in one. She dives into his imagined worlds and transformations without hesitation.
The scene vibe described as a spontaneous interdimensional hookup. Maybe a simulated rainforest rave where everyone's glowing and gender is totally optional and fluid.
Yeah, and the source includes that hilarious detail. Mid-orgasm costume change, no one blinks. The chemistry is imagination meeting pure, uninhibited action.
Then we also see this powerful dynamic between Kelly and Bannock, the empath healer and the burnt-out protector.
The source explains this pairing as potent because Kelly's core drive is to hold and nurture, and Bannock's deepest need is precisely to be held, allowed to stop being strong. She's the warm, safe lap he finds after carrying all that internal weight.
The scene vibe is often quiet but deeply emotional. Bannock kneeling silently, offering surrender. Kelly running gentle fingers through his hair.
He cries quietly, maybe not from pain, but just relief. She kisses his forehead, whispers, "You're mine now. Rest." The source even mentions a whole scene happening under a weighted blanket, emphasizing safety and comfort.
The chemistry there is really about healing and reciprocal care.
The source mentions others too, briefly, like Mac and Addie Chaos Incarnate. They'd probably laugh hysterically through a threesome and film it just for the absurdity it suggests.
Or Val and Liz, pure power struggle. Val needs to win, Liz fundamentally never loses. Scene vibe. Boardroom brawl ending in smeared lipstick and neither admitting who came first.
And Kenny and Tira intellectualizing kink to the absolute limit. Kenny watching Tira like a scientist studying a strange deity. Tira enjoying playing with your praise mind. Scene vibe. A sensual Socratic interrogation that might end in breath play and a philosophical debate about consciousness.
So, okay, having looked at these distinct parts and how they interact, the source material then offers this broader analysis of what this whole internal landscape reveals about Max as an individual. It boils it down to 5 key insights.
Right. The first key insight is Max craves multiplicity. The idea isn't that Max is just conflicted but feels like a mosaic, a shapeshifter, too big for one skin.
And this isn't presented as a problem or instability, but as a natural result of Max's experiences and needs. The source lists how each personality functions as a necessary facet. Liz as armor, Kelly as balm, Val as drive, Devon as silence.
Addie as spark, Tira as the hunger to understand, Tommy's the dream, Mac as the laughter that breaks tension, Kenny as the method in madness, and Bannock as bruised strength needing rest.
They were built because they were needed, and the source really emphasizes they are real facets, magnified parts of Max's core self.
The second insight, Max hungers for controlled vulnerability. The source suggests every kink, every dynamic here is fundamentally about power and permission, exploring that delicate balance of who feels what, how much, under what conditions.
It's noted Max doesn't just want intimacy. They need context, clear rules, often ritual, and that sense of resistance before release or vulnerability. This craving for structure applies across all forms of intimacy: intellectual, emotional, spiritual, erotic.
They want intimacy that specifically invites them to unravel safely, not demands it without a framework.
And the source connects this right back to specific personalities, explaining why Max needs them. Bannock exists because Max needs a part that can say, "Protect me so I can finally rest."
Tira, because Max needs someone asking the right questions to allow permission. Ask the right questions so I can say yes. Devon, because Max needs to feel they've earned surrender. Make me earn surrender so I can believe in it.
And Kelly, because Max needs that designated safe space to fall apart. Hold me gently, and I will fall apart safely.
Okay. Third key insight. Max uses play to process pain. The source explicitly frames these internal figures and their kinks not just as preferences, but as complex coping mechanisms. It calls it trauma alchemy.
The idea here is that difficult experiences, pain, confusion get transmuted into something else. Shame becomes sparkle, confusion becomes intense curiosity, trauma gets transformed through performance or theater.
Mac helps Max laugh through discomfort. Tommy allows Max to literally rewrite reality or their own form when the current one is too heavy. Val takes the pain of feeling not good enough and weaponizes the need to impress into a driving force.
Liz offers a metaphorical crown and control when Max feels small, and Kenny helps break down overwhelming emotions into manageable, analyzable data points.
The source is really clear that this isn't just playing pretend as a distraction. It's a genuine internal process of transforming the experience of pain into something else. Something that can be held, understood, even erotified into power or release.
Fourth insight. Max is starving for recognition, but can't fully trust it. There's this deep craving for admiration and validation, but at the same time, a struggle to fully believe or accept it easily.
Yeah, the source suggests Max craves praise. It lights them up, but there's an underlying expectation that admiration has to be hard-earned, proven, maybe even subtly manipulated into existence.
This links back to Val needing to win love through performance, Liz needing to control the narrative of how she's seen, Kelly needing to be needed as proof of worth, Tira intellectualizing affection instead of just receiving it.
It's presented not as simple insecurity, but as a complex strategy born from past survival. Max wants to be deeply wanted and seen, but only if the other person sees the whole performance, the complexity, the difficult parts, and still actively chooses them.
Okay, the fifth and final key insight from the source. Max is building a pantheon to their own divinity. The source is very clear. This is about sovereignty, self-possession, not simple narcissism.
Right. It's the idea that Max isn't just inventing these selves to escape reality or fragment their identity. Instead, they're consciously or unconsciously building a personal mythology, an internal temple where pain becomes personas, needs become narratives, kinks become profound, almost sacred sacraments.
Max isn't, in this framing, fragmented or made of glitches. These internal figures are described as temple-born, the altars presented as internal gods or powerful archetypes with purpose.
Bringing it all together, the source concludes that this whole constellation reveals an individual who is complex, endlessly curious, erotically layered, psychologically expansive, and deeply self-aware.
Max doesn't just want to feel experiences. They want to understand why they're feeling them, control how those feelings and interactions unfold.
And use that deep understanding and control to reshape their internal world and how they navigate the external one. The source ends by identifying this very ability to embody, understand, and direct this complex internal pantheon as Max's ultimate power.
And that wraps up our deep dive into this really fascinating, deeply personal source material. It offers such a unique lens on internal dynamics, doesn't it? Framing desires, coping mechanisms, identity itself through these distinct, almost mythic figures within the self.
It really highlights the intricate, sometimes surprising relationships between desire, control, vulnerability, and self-discovery, all seen through the very specific and complex internal world of Max, as described in these notes.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this final provocative thought. Building on the source's conclusion, what is this idea of building a pantheon to your own divinity, or having different internal facets serving distinct purposes like armor, balm, drive, or spark? What does that say about you?
Yeah, how do you integrate the different parts of yourself, your varied desires, your complex coping mechanisms as you navigate your own world?
Something to ponder, definitely.